In the grim darkness of the far future, amidst the ravaged battlefields and forgotten corners of the universe, whispers of unspeakable horrors echo through the void. Welcome, brave souls, to a realm where fear reigns supreme, and the line between sanity and madness is but a fragile thread. Welcome to the twisted tales of Warhammer Horror. The Bloody Kiss. Darius Hinks. She waits for me in the Vladimir forest, where trees root in blood and the hagkin howl. Where my life found meaning. Maria. I whisper her name and it burns my veins, quickening my pulse, making me stumble like a drunk through the streets of Dravko. My need for her is a kind of agony, too much to bear. But soon the wait will be over. The Kuvari patrol the walls, yawning at the endless waves of snow, swaddled in their greatcoats and leaning heavily on spears. They are not facing my way. The sentries are not employed to spy on their fellow villagers. They keep watch for the dead, not the living. Still, one could easily turn and catch sight of me. Raziv, they would cry, incredulous. What drags you from your bed at this hour? Go back to your wife. And what is that look in your eyes? For there is no way I could conceal my passion. It burns too bright. It would shine from my skin. Like the geists in the Vladimir forest, I am luminous. My hunger for Maria is so great, it is almost a torture. Only the knowledge that I will soon hold her keeps me from madness. Lights flicker behind a few of the shuttered windows, but most people will be asleep by now, or too drunk to care about people creeping past their door. I duck low behind a grain wagon and approach the town gates with caution. The market square is bathed in moonlight, and frost glints on the cobblestones. I pause at the end of a side street, hiding in the shadows beneath a frozen awning. My breath pools around me in the darkness, and I can already feel my beard starting to freeze. I try to imagine what Sanja would say if she was here, rather than away at her brother's wedding feast. She would stare at me with those docile, childlike eyes, and then she would start to weep, unable to understand, unable to accept that I could betray her. She believes so completely in me. She thinks I am perfect, her beloved husband. Guilt starts to dampen my mood, so I think instead of Maria, picturing her tawny hair, remembering how it winds down her long, pale neck. Guilt goes forgotten as I remember the rest of Maria. But more than her body, it is her soul that I hunger for. There are brothels in Dravko. If it was a simple matter of lust, I could have found easier ways to slake my thirst. But no one in Dravko could give me the things that Maria has. For the first time in my life, I feel alive. Truly alive. Since childhood, I have felt oddly numb, only pretending to care about the things others care about, wondering all the time why I feel nothing. Life has always seemed remote to me and unreal. But out there in the trees, surrounded by so much death, I have finally found something to live for. I take a last glance up at the guards, then sprint for the gates. They are locked, of course, but there is a smaller door, to the left of the main gates, and I have the key. Trappers like me come and go as we please. At first, I think the lock is too frozen to work, but then the metal clicks, and I am free, rushing out of Dravko, racing across the snow like a cloud-thrown shadow. For most people, it would be madness to venture out so late. The town is surrounded by dark, sprawling forests, and even in daylight, it is not safe. These are the hunting grounds of the hagkin, the lupine, blood-hungry damned who have given themselves to the wolf hag. Some people call them Virkos, some call them Kuzlak, others name them the children of the hag, or even just the hounds, but they are nothing like hounds. My work takes me further into the woods than most, and I have glimpsed the hagkin at close quarters. Some are savage and bestial, deformed by the wolf hag's blood kiss, but others are still recognizable as the humans they once were. Those are the ones I fear the most. I was once on the verge of greeting a man when I saw the madness in his eyes and the odd, distended shape of his fang-crowded mouth. My pistol saved my life, but I still remember the feel of his hands, clawing at my throat, trying to find purchase. I follow the course of a frozen stream, through bone-white meadows and glittering gullies, ducking snow-laden boughs and keeping to the shadows. But I feel no fear. These lands are not as dangerous for me as they would be for most. My father taught me the secret ways and the old paths, just as his father taught him. These are the routes the Virkos never take, the routes they cannot find, places hidden by the old magic. The wolf hag has not always ruled these lands, and there is an ancient power in these hills. My father believed it is older even than the great necromancer himself, but he was wise enough never to make that claim in front of any priests. I look for signs no one else would see. A shadow that leans the wrong way. A patch of snow that glistens. A different hue. A hawthorn with branches knotted into a rune. By these marks, I make an easy passage down the valley and reach the borders of Vladim Forest. The sight of the trees fills me with euphoria. It was here, under this ancient canopy, that I first met Maria. It was less than a year ago, but my whole life springs from that moment. I am not a bad man. I had never thought of betraying Sanja. And in my own way, I do love her. My wife is a simple, timid creature, but I would never wish her any harm, and no harm shall come to her. Out here, in the frozen forest, secrets remain unspoken. Maria has never asked if I have a wife, and I doubt she ever will. The topic would bore her. She talks to me instead of Jaramir's poetry. She weeps as she describes the quality of light in Orada's paintings. Zeal burns in her eyes as she whispers to me of her travels, describing the great temples and cities of the south. She holds me so tight, it hurts, as she tells me of lightning-wielding paladins who fall from storms and bring word of a new, greater god, the Heldenhammer. The most exciting thing I ever discuss with Sanja is the flavor of that day's dried meat. Sanja could not understand half the things Maria says, and she could not conceive of the thrill I feel as I sprint through the night, heart drumming against my ribs, wind filling my eyes with tears. I skirt the borders of the forest, searching for the right way in. There are countless paths, but most lead into the jaws of the hagkin. The undead are legion, and they have claimed these groves for their own. Some were once people I knew. Life is brutal in Dravko, just as it is in all the other settlements. There is never enough food, never enough warmth, but the real hardship is the endless fear. Settlements are overrun all the time. Sometimes it is the wolf hag's hounds, but not always. Zalesk was raised by cannibals who worshipped through the collection of skulls. The stink of burning bodies filled the valleys for weeks as the cannibals celebrated their victory. And a few months before that, Shushkin simply vanished. Our greatest trading partners disappeared overnight, leaving nothing but blue fire, a vast pillar of flames that hovered over the snow, forming a flickering number 9. It was as if the town had simply never existed. It is fear that makes life so hard, fear of being so helpless, which is why so many give themselves to the wolf hag. They take the blood kiss because they crave her power. They know what will become of them. They know they are damning themselves, but there is a kind of power in making a choice, even if it is a dreadful one. At least they have decided the manner of their fall. At least they no longer have to wait, terrified, to see what manner of horror will eventually claim them. It takes me half an hour, but I finally spot it, a place where the gap between two trees is brighter than it should be. The moonlight bouncing off a surface that is not there. I dash through the gap, recognizing a track I have used since childhood. Under the darkness of the trees, the cold sinks through my furs, locking around my bones and causing my jaw to shake. I am still young and strong, not yet 30, and I can endure anything the elements throw at me. But my hunger for Maria is growing worse. It is a physical pain. I have to hold her. I have to hear her voice. And I have to do it before this torment overwhelms me. I vault over trunks that have been toppled by the weight of snow and slide across frozen ponds. In one hand I grip my hunting knife, sensible enough to know that even I am not immune to danger. In my other hand I hold the gift I have brought for Maria, a small leather-bound book, a collection of Jaromyr's poems. It is the most expensive thing I have ever bought. Keeping it secret from Sanja has been hard, but I cannot wait to see Maria's eyes light up when I hand it to her. I have not been in the forest very long when I realize something is wrong. The trees always echo to the sound of hagkin. I heard them the moment I entered the forest. Eerie howls that harmonize with the wind, moaning through dead branches and whipping the snow. But as I struggle through walls of frozen undergrowth, I hear something nearby. A quick, heavy panting that can only be a few feet away. A deer, a bear, or another hunter, perhaps. It would be odd for someone to be out at such a late hour, but not impossible. I keep still, holding my breath as I peer through columns of shadow and moonlight. The panting stops. "Who's there?" I say, trying to sound unafraid. There is no reply. As the silence stretches out, I feel sure that someone is watching me. The animals of the forest would not skulk like this. They either attack or flee. This must be someone from the town, either that or one of the Virkos. But vampires have never found these paths before. It is not possible. The old ways are hidden. "Who is that?" I demand, sure that it must be a hunter. "Velizar," I call. "Is it you?" Old man Velizar is the only hunter I know who regularly comes into the forest at night. Like me, he knows the secret ways through the trees, and he has always managed to find food, even when the rest of us are eating boot leather. There is no reply, but as I stare into the shadows between the trees, I make out a figure, motionless in the dark, watching me in silence. I grip my knife tighter and turn slowly from the path, trying to see who it is. "Speak, damn you." I'm unable to keep a tremor from my voice. "Is it you, Velizar?" The figure remains silent. I see a pair of eyes, glittering in the moonlight. Then the figure bolts, dashing off through the undergrowth and vanishing from sight. I stand there for a moment, trying to steady my breathing. If it was one of the hagkin, it may have gone to fetch the rest of its pack. Perhaps it was wary of attacking me alone for some reason. I am a large, powerfully built man, and I am armed. Even a vampire might be wary of my bullets. There is nothing I can do. I certainly don't want to leave the path and head into the heart of the forest. The route I have chosen will take me directly to the old redoubt, where Maria and I meet. It would be madness to start chasing phantoms when I am so close to her. The howls continue, but they seem no nearer than before. I head on, but move with more caution, listening out for the sound of breathing. I travel another half a mile before I reach a frozen stream and tread carefully on the thick plates of ice. The opposite bank is ridged and bumpy, where the mud has been frozen into contorted shapes. I haul myself up and then halt, staring in shock. Everything in the forest is white or gray, draped in ice and snow, but lying ahead of me on the path is a splash of garish color that jars horribly against its surroundings. Velizar is in here with me, but he is no longer hunting. He has been torn apart, his lower half ripped away, leaving only the parts from the waist up. His insides have been scattered across the snow in a bright spiral of crimson. It looks like someone has hurled a meal across the ground. He stares at me as I approach, his eyes blank, and his head twisted at a repulsive angle by the savage wounds inflicted on his neck. His throat has been torn away. "Hagkin," I whisper, dropping into a crouch and raising my knife, waiting for an attack. Nothing happens, but then, after a few moments, I hear the panting I heard before, the quick, heavy breathing of an animal. "Come out," I spit, waving my knife. "Why are you hiding?" It is panic rather than courage that makes me yell. The thought that I am being stalked is awful. I do not fear for my life, but that I might not reach Maria. I can face anything but that. "Come on," I whisper, pacing around the steaming corpse. "Face me." Then I see the figure again, watching me from the darkness, silent and unmoving, staring directly at me. I lunge and it flees. I catch a glimpse of a purple and yellow sash. Then it is gone, and I am left floundering in the brambles with no sign of my tormentor. "How?" I say, returning to the path and staring at the pieces of Velizar. For my whole life, these paths have remained hidden. And in my father's time, it was the same. Someone must have led the Virkos here. But why would anyone do such a stupid thing? I crouch beside Velizar, looking into his dead eyes. "Did you bring them here? Why would you do that?" Then it occurs to me. Did you come looking for the blood kiss? Did you want to join them? Even those who are desperate enough to offer themselves to the wolf hag cannot be sure of a place in her pack. The Virkos are as likely to devour their victims as they are to grant them immortality. As I stare at Velizar's quickly cooling corpse, my anger grows. I feel sure this is somehow his fault. What if I fail to reach Maria? What if I die out here and she thinks I chose not to meet her? I cannot bear it. I grip my head, trying to crush the panic. Never in all my life have I felt such torment. How can I endure it? This journey through the woods feels like it is taking an eternity. I spit on Velizar's corpse, then turn and look around at the trees. If this path has been revealed to the Virkos, I will have to find another. I climb up one of the trees and look out across the forest. I can recognize my surroundings well enough, and I quickly spot a different path, one that should still be hidden, but the vampire could follow my scent. If it is still nearby, which I assume it is, it would be easy for it to follow me. I stare into the gloom, desperate for a solution. Then my gaze comes to rest on a dazzling patch of silver. It is a bend of a river called the Malaska that cuts right through the forest. The water is so deep and fast-moving that it rarely freezes. If I cross the river, the water would mask my scent. I would just need to find a safe point to climb the opposite bank without being observed. The water will be painfully cold, perhaps fatally cold, but I can think of no other way to rid myself of the beast that is stalking me. And I cannot bear the thought of leading it to Maria. I break off from the path and enter the trees, sprinting across ice and crashing through snowdrifts, heedless of the danger, heedless of anything except the need to reach the redoubt before I am taken. All around me, the howling starts to grow louder and more frenzied. They have my scent. They are coming. I reach a wide, moonlit clearing and whip out my pistol, sure that this is where the vampires will strike. Snow is falling heavily, rolling in the moonlight, and making it hard to see clearly. Something moves on the far side of the clearing. I raise my gun. I am about to fire when I realize I am taking aim at a broken branch that is swaying in the breeze. I laugh, but the sound is shrill and odd, not like my own voice. "Are you there?" I whisper, scanning the clearing for the figure I saw earlier, the one that must have killed Velizar. The howls swell as if answering me, but there is nothing else, only the branch creaking as it swings back and forth. I step out into the clearing, my rag-swaddled boots crunching through the deep snow. Nothing happens. I reach the opposite side of the clearing and rush on down the path. The river is now visible up ahead, and the water is moving, as I thought it would be. There are huge trees leaning over it, weighed down by snow and creating an enormous tunnel. Once I am under the sagging boughs, I will be hidden. I should not have to endure the water for very long before I can climb the other bank. I gasp as I reach the water and plunge in. The cold is intense. It feels like fire rippling across my legs. I stumble, shocked by the ferocity of the pain, and almost fall into the currents. I reach for one of the overhanging branches to steady myself, but the tree groans and cracks. For a horrible moment, I think the whole lot will come down, dumping tons of snow on me, but it holds, and I wade on, wheezing and shaking my head as the cold eats into me. I do not manage to travel far in the water. I'm feeling dizzy and weak. I make for the opposite bank, glance back to see if I have been followed, then climb up back into the trees. My legs feel like they have been broken. I can hardly walk as I stumble through the undergrowth. I have only just left the water when I hear movement from behind me. I halt and look back to see a man running towards me. He is dressed in trapper furs and gripping an axe, but I can see immediately that he is one of the Virkos. His face is contorted, his eyes rolling loosely in their sockets. Strings of drool are hanging from his mouth. I barely have time to pull out my knife before he slams into me. His attack is clumsy and uncoordinated, and we roll back through the bracken. I slam into a trunk, and the overhanging tree groans again, shedding snow. The clatter of metal against metal echoes through the trees as I bring my knife up to parry a sword strike. The vampire grins and leans against me, filling my nostrils with an abattoir stink. "Hungry," it says, drooling as it presses its face closer. I bring my knee up into its stomach, and, as the vampire doubles over, I step back and kick it in the face, sending it tumbling through the snow. It leaps back to its feet and rushes at me, swinging the sword again. I sidestep and plant my foot in its back, but it grabs my leg, sending me thudding into a tree trunk. Pain explodes across the side of my face, and I tumble into a snowdrift. The sounds of the forest become muffled and distant, but I hear feet pounding towards me and know I have to move. I wrench myself free, stagger to my feet, and dodge the vampire's sword as it whistles past my face. The creature is thrown forwards by its own momentum and stumbles back towards the riverbank. I raise my pistol and take aim at the monster's head. Then I have a better idea. Bullets rarely stop the Virkos, but something else might. I fire at the tree that has been groaning since I grabbed one of its branches. The vampire looks up in shock as a section of the massive tree judders and drops towards the ground. Snow hits with the force of a landslide, crashing into me and sending me staggering backwards. When the air clears, I see no sign of my attacker. Where it was standing there is now a mountain of snow and broken branches. Still struggling to walk, I limp towards the riverbank. After a few seconds, I hear a sound beneath the pile of snow, a muffled scratching, as the vampire struggles to dig its way out. I turn and do my best to run, making for the pass. To my relief, my legs still work, and after a few minutes, my clumsy limp becomes something approaching a jog. I reach the path, entering it through a route the Virkos should not be able to find, and, as I run on, I hear no signs of pursuit. Soon after, I spot the redoubt up ahead. It is at the top of the next rise, a ragged silhouette jutting up from the treetops. No one else would dream of trying to reach it. It is far too deep in the forest. Maria was delighted when I taught her the hidden paths. She loved the idea that our secret meetings would take place surrounded by so much danger. I am no fool. Maria is too beautiful and interesting to spend her time with me. It is the risk that has drawn her to me, the excitement of meeting here, surrounded by the howls of the night creatures. But I do not care why she wants me, only that she wants me. I climb over the first hill and then approach the second, with the redoubt looming over me. I have to battle the urge to scream in delight. There is light leaking from the deep arrow-slit windows. She is here. I can even recognize the scent of her perfume drifting through the cold air. I whisper her name as I climb the hill, moving as fast as I can go, heading for the doorway. The redoubt is ancient, built in another age by masons using skills that have since been lost. The building is rounded and hunched by age, but it will probably still be standing when Dravko has crumbled to dust. It wears such a thick, knotted skirt of brambles that much of the stonework has been obscured, but there are glimpses of grandeur here and there, peering through the thorns. The faces of glowering kings, who ruled in an era when men could take the time to build something that would last. I dust myself down as I approach the door and wipe some of the ice from my face, trying to look less like a vagabond. I pause at the threshold to take a last look behind me, and I am delighted to see no sign of Hagkin. I have made it. My pulse is hammering in my temples. The wait is over. I step into the tower. Maria stares at me, tears in her eyes as I stumble into the candlelight. For a moment I think she is hovering in the air, performing a strange, flamboyant greeting. Her hands are thrown back like a dancer. But then I see the blood, the floor, the walls, the air. Everything is drenched in blood. Maria's throat has been torn open. Shock roots me to the spot until I see the figure who has killed her. A towering feral vampire, its face rent out of shape by a bestial snout. It is gripping Maria, with hands that are horribly elongated and bristling with filthy talons. The strength goes from my legs, and I drop to my knees. Maria is still gasping, blood foaming at her lips, but she is past saving. The monster has torn her apart as brutally as Velizar. Her body is as torn and sodden as her clothes. I raise my pistol, but it is no more than a reflex. I have no interest in fighting. What would I fight for? She is dead. The vampire feeds on her slowly, delighting in every crunch and snap, savoring each throatful while keeping its eyes locked on me, reveling in my fear and grief. I fire the pistol, but my hand is shaking so badly the shot barely glances the monster. It stumbles slightly, then drops Maria's corpse and lurches towards me, bloody saliva trailing from its muzzle. It is only as the Virkos grips me that I realize something. The purple and yellow sash it is wearing is familiar. Numb with terror and grief, I take it in my hands, staring at the blood-drenched cloth. The vampire pauses, letting me examine the sash, seeming pleased that I have noticed it. It is Sanja's, I realize. It is my wife's sash, but how can it be here, in the forest, worn by this creature? Realization dawns as I see other scraps of clothing beneath the blood. They are all equally familiar. "Sanja?" I whisper, staring into the monster's eyes. The monster's lips curl back, revealing its teeth in a horrible approximation of a smile. I try to reconcile memories of my sweet, feeble wife with the nightmare that is crushing my arms in its claws. "Forever," says Sanja, her voice contorted by triumph and rage. She holds up a small wax doll, threaded with scraps of my hair and dressed to resemble me. "You will seek her forever, and always find her like this." Then she leans closer, widening her jaws to give me one last kiss. Pain explodes across my face, and as I take my last breath, I see the truth clearly. The tower is not full of fresh blood, but heaped with dust and crumbling bones. I am not a young man, not strong. I am a frail, stooped, old wretch. In a brief moment of clarity, I realize that this has all happened before. It has happened many times before. She waits for me in the Vladim forest, where trees root in blood, and the hagkin howl, where my life found meaning. "Maria," I whisper her name, and it burns my veins, quickening my pulse, making me stumble like a drunk through the streets of Dravko. My need for her is a kind of agony, too much to bear, but soon the wait will be over.